welcome back to Matt's Christmas B-Movie Reviews, the show that looks at unusual festive movies that may have escaped your ho-ho-ho radar. Don't know what the ho-ho-ho in that part of it was for, but forget it. I can't actually believe it's that time of year again. It seems to just roll around quicker each time. Anyway, you know the drill. I'm going to look at 2 festive Christmas B-movies and give you my personal ratings. And this year I've seen a couple of cracking movies that I think you're really going to get a kick out of. So prepare yourself for A Christmas Horror Story and Rare Exports. So are they actually worth watching? Stick around and find out. Feature presentation. So first let's check out A Christmas Horror Story. Now this festive horror anthology movie comprises 4 different tales of terror. We have Santa versus an army of zombified elves on Christmas Eve. He's got his work cut out for him. A family who run afoul of the evil anti-Claus Krampus whilst trying to get home. There's also a couple whose son starts to act very strangely after he got lost in some woods. Did they perhaps bring home a changeling? And student filmmakers who sneak into a college campus to find out the real story about a ritualistic murder that happened there, only to be trapped inside with an evil presence. Oh, and lastly we have Billy Shatner himself trying to keep up his spirits during a tiring shift on Christmas Eve. So that's it, a quartet of stories kinda held together by Bill Shatner's radio DJ schlock. Now if you're a regular subscriber to this channel you'll know that I love horror anthology movies, and with this one coming out just in time for my Christmas B-movie reviews I couldn't resist and had to slap it into this edition. The real question is though, does this movie work as an anthology? Well, kind of. Now most traditional anthology movies have 3 or 4 separate stories that are usually surrounded by a wraparound tale, and as a viewer we watch one story at a time and then eventually go back to the wraparound story. Unfortunately the makers of this movie have decided to go a completely different route. I have no idea why. As one story starts off and we're introduced to the characters, after a few minutes it cuts to the next story and we get the characters in the exposition, then it cuts to the next story, we get the characters in the exposition, and then, oh, what happens then? Let me see. It cuts to the next story and we get the characters in exposition again. By cutting the story up in this way it kind of leads to a complete shambles and would probably have you thinking that nothing really much has happened within the first 45 minutes of the movie. And some audiences will probably just switch off. There are only really a couple of instances where the cuts between stories actually worked. That was probably more to do with the kind of the TV effect where they leave the characters in some sort of peril, then we switch to a different story, then kind of switch back to keep you guessing. This kind of happens not until at least half or 3/4 of the way into the movie where you're that invested in the characters themselves. So it will leave you scratching your head why they chose to do it in this format. But hey, on repeat viewings I'll probably get more into it because I realise what they're kind of going for now. But as a first viewing it could put you off the movie, I'm just saying. And you know what I say, there's nothing wrong with the old anthology format, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now the stories themselves are, as you come to expect with an anthology, a very mixed bag. Now the Santa Claus segment where he has to fend himself off from zombified elves that have turned for some other reason on Christmas Eve was pretty fun, and seeing Santa Claus stomp around with this big staff chopping zombified elves' heads off and necks off and whatever else was enjoyable actually, and the gore level was quite high. Saying that, I did feel a little bit let down by this story. The chopping in between different stories and back to the Santa Claus one, which was probably the better one, felt like it had big chunks missing out of it. I mean, this segment is the main poster child for the movie and well worth seeing the film for. Now the Krampus segment was interesting in itself because I've never actually seen a movie about the anti-Claus figure. I know there is another Krampus movie that's just come out into the cinemas over here and looked pretty damn scary, so when I go see that I'll give you the lowdown. And if I've already seen it, click the link here, 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 here. If something's popping up, click that link. So anyway, the Krampus segment was pretty interesting. As well as that, it starred briefly the guy who played Death in Supernatural, if you ever watched that show, which was kind of cool to see him in a different role, although he was a very ominous figure, and he plays them so well. I mean, I suppose the main point of it is, once you get onto Krampus's naughty list, there's no way you're going to survive the night. The William Shatner radio DJ segment should have really, I felt, been the wraparound story to the entire movie. He could have segued into each story because as I believe some of the characters are listening to him on the radio in different parts of the film. But for some reason they've not gone with that and they decided to chop it up. As I've already explained, I'm not going to go into that again. So the William Shatner bit is really just filler for the movie. His entire story is just sat behind a desk talking into the microphone. So not really much going on there. The Changeling story was pretty cool because I've not seen many movies that deal with that theme. Of an old Grimm's fairy tale story that's been updated for modern times. It was pretty good. And then we have the student filmmakers who get trapped in a college campus with an evil presence. That was definitely one story in this movie that kind of could have been cut out and they could have just expanded some of the other stories. I didn't feel it really added much to the movie. Like I say, it just didn't really work for me, so overall it's an anthology movie with problems, but I've never actually seen an anthology movie that didn't have problems. Maybe Creepshow won, but I'm not going to go into that argument now. I'm going to give this movie a 3 presents out of a possible 5 because it is a fun movie, it's trying to be. Let's hope they do a sequel and they get it right next time round. Anyway, movie 2 is Rare Exports. Here's the plot. It's the Christmas season in Finland, and at an archaeological dig site they've unearthed something that has been buried in the mountains for centuries. The local inhabitants that are adjacent to this site are experiencing some very strange occurrences, and one of the local boys reckons that Santa is coming to town. But not the cheesy traditional Coca-Cola Santa that we all know and love. Oh no, it's the original dark figure who'll punish the naughty and quite probably the nice. Can a ragtag group of local farmers stop the rise of Satan, I mean Santa Claus and his army of elves? Or are all the children of the village doomed? Now firstly I've got to say this is one of the most unusual Christmas movies or movies period that I have ever seen. Now the premise of this movie had me hooked. The sort of dark lore mixing with a much older, darker Finnish legend was a nice touch and completely original in its own right really. For an independent movie it's got a decent budget and the set design is top notch. I mean, as the movie started some of the shots alone were breathtaking and I just had to sit back and admire the camera work. Plus later on in the movie I saw a few nods or homages to John Carpenter's The Thing, which is set in a very similar frosty environment. The movie is shot in its traditional language but does have English that pops up intermittently throughout the film. Luckily I had the subtitled edition which I picked up in Poundland, which is the usual place to get some of these wackier movies from. This is the sort of movie I would have liked to have seen at some sort of student film festival. When I was a student, seeing some of those movies on the big screen with an audience that heckled and jeckled and laughed and chucked stuff at the screen was just great fun, and this movie really works for that sort of crowd. However, I know, sorry, the film never quite lives up to its opening build-up and premise. Now the first half of the movie is brilliant. It's taut, it's visually stunning, we've got the characters, the build-up is amazing, the story just lays out, you think this is going to be one hell of a film that I've just never seen the likes of before. I mean, it's not every day you're going to have a totally serious movie that deals with a demonic Santa Claus. Although the two main characters of the movie, a father and his son who are mourning the loss of the mother figure, adds real dramatic depth to their actions. But unfortunately the film forgets its premise along the way. And without giving away a massive spoiler, all I will say is that you're going to feel robbed of an epic third reel showdown as the filmmakers go an entirely different route with the movie. It kind of ties in with the title, but you're going to be left scratching your head why they didn't do what they should have done. Say no more. Now another oddity of the movie is that Santa's elves are not depicted in the usual sense. They're actually depicted as raggedy old naked men. Yeah, which is pretty damn weird. But when you add in that they're stealing children for the great god that is Santa Claus, it makes for some very uncomfortable screen time. Rare Exports is a very bizarre movie but told from a damn serious point of view. It's completely original in its own right and deserves to be the cult classic that it is destined to become, if that makes sense. Seek it out wherever DVDs are sold. I believe Amazon Prime has got it to rent on there. Just make sure you get the subtitled version. I'm going to give it 2.5 presents out of a possible 5, just because it's lacking in some respects. But go seeketh it out. And on that note, it's the end of the show. I really hope you've enjoyed my Christmas B-movie reviews. If you're still looking for more to watch, why not check out the video outro that'll follow the end of this video. Thanks for watching as usual, Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year. Bye! Short stories that all have very strange subject matter, kind of like Ray Bradbury meets Clyde Barton, which is pretty damn weird in my
So it's a festive time of year again, where I'm looking at the dodgy, banging basement, whatever you want to call it, Christmas movies that are out there. Forget Home Alone 1 and 2, they're way too mainstream.